Tabora town was alive that morning, as it always was. The sound of roosters crowing blended with the distant calls of vendors arranging their stalls in the bustling marketplace. The air smelled of fresh chapati frying on coal stoves, mingled with the earthy scent of Dukas soil. In the heart of this town lived Baba Zahra and Mama Zahra, a couple known as much for their kindness as for the whispered tragedy of their childless home. The two sat side by side in the waiting area of the town's small fertility clinic. Baba Zahra adjusted his brown cap nervously, glancing at his wife, who clutched her chiton shawl as though it could shield her from disappointment. Dr. Juma, a soft-spoken but sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, appeared in the doorway. She smiled, beckoning them into her office. Dr. Juma, please come in. I have some news for you both. The couple exchanged a nervous glance before stepping inside. The doctor gestured for them to sit and open the folder in front of her. Dr. Juma, Mama Zahra, Baba Zahra, congratulations. You're expecting a child. You're already 3 months along. The room fell silent for a moment, as though the very air held its breath. Mama Zahra, Dr. Juma, are you sure? Her voice trembled. We've waited so long. How can this be true? Dr. Juma leaned forward, her smile warm. Dr. Juma, the tests don't lie. Your prayers have been answered. Baba Zahra let out a laugh that turned into a sob, covering his face with his hands. Mama Zahra, too overwhelmed to speak, simply clung to her husband. When they left the clinic, their joy spilled into the streets. Baba Zahra bought a basket of mangoes from a vendor and handed them out to strangers. Mama Zahra wiped her tears, smiling at everyone they passed. Baba Zahra, God has remembered us. We are having a child. The news spread like wildfire, and soon, the entire neighborhood knew. Women came to their home, bringing gifts and offering prayers for a safe delivery. 9 months later, the day arrived. It was a humid night, and the stars glittered above Tabora like scattered diamonds. Inside their modest home, Mama Zahra cried out as the midwife coached her through the delivery. Baba Zahra paced outside, wringing his hands. Finally, a baby's cry pierced the night. The midwife stepped out, beaming. Midwife, it's a girl. She's healthy and beautiful. Baba Zahra rushed inside to find his wife holding their daughter, her face radiant despite the exhaustion. Mama Zahra, she's our blessing, Baba Zahra. We'll name her Nima. But as the days turned into weeks, the nickname Zahra, meaning flower, began to stick. She was the light of their lives, and from the moment she could crawl, they spoiled her endlessly. By the time Zahra was 5, she had the household wrapped around her little finger. If she cried, the maids scrambled to find her sweets. If she pouted, Mama Zahra would drop everything to comfort her. One afternoon, as the maids were scrubbing the courtyard, Zahra ran in, dragging a stick across the wet tiles. Amina, the maid, Zahra, be careful, you'll make more work for us. Zahra tilted her head, her dark eyes wide with mock innocence. Zahra, Mama says you're here to work, so why are you complaining? Amina sighed, muttering under her breath as Zahra skipped away. The maids often whispered about the child when her parents weren't around. Amina, this girl is going to grow up thinking the world owes her something. Saida, another maid, and whose fault is that? Baba and Mama Zahra treat her like a queen. Indeed, Zahra grew up knowing she was adored. On her 7th birthday, her parents threw a lavish party, inviting the entire neighborhood. Zahra wore a gold dress, spinning in circles to make the fabric shimmer. Neighbor, she's a princess, that one. Let's hope she doesn't forget how to be humble. But humility was a foreign concept to Zahra. Tabora town was a place where everyone knew everyone, and everyone had an opinion about the people they saw day after day. Zahra was no exception. From the moment she learned to walk, she became the center of attention wherever she went. Whether it was the scent of flowers that seemed to follow her wherever she went, or the graceful way she held herself, people couldn't help but admire her. But behind that beauty was an attitude that could cut sharper than any knife. The sun was high in the sky, casting golden beams over the dusty streets of Tabora. Zahra stepped out of her family's house, her feet slipping into delicate sandals, her body draped in a bright yellow kitenge that fluttered as she moved. The marketplace was bustling with life. Vendors called out their wares, children darted between shoppers, and the smell of frying fish filled the air. But Zahra wasn't looking for fish or vegetables. She was looking for attention. Zahra, Malem, you've put too much salt on this fish. It's too salty for someone of my taste. Malem, the elderly fishmonger, smiled nervously, his hands shaking as he rearranged his display. Malem, forgive me, Zahra. I will fix it right away. Zahra waved her hand dismissively, turning to leave without another word. But the nearby women, who had witnessed the exchange, exchanged furtive glances. One of them, Maimuna, leaned over to another. Maimuna, she's beautiful, but so rude. Does she think she's too good for everyone? Saida, she's never worked a day in her life. She's been treated like a queen, but she'll find out soon enough that the world doesn't revolve around her. Zahra heard their words, but didn't acknowledge them. She didn't care what anyone thought of her. She was Zahra, the daughter of Baba and Mama Zahra, and the whole world should know it. As Zahra strolled through the marketplace, heads turned. She caught the eye of a few men, their gazes lingering on her as they tried to catch her attention. She knew they were watching. She always knew. There was something about her, her hips, the curve of her waist, the way her smile could light up the whole town, that made men do double takes. One young man, Hussein, approached her with a bundle of bananas. Hussein, Zahra, I have the sweetest bananas from my farm. Please take them. A gift from me to you. Zahra looked him up and down, her lips curling into a smile that could have melted steel. Zahra, how much are they? Hussein flustered. For you, nothing. You're too special to pay. She raised an eyebrow. Zahra, how convenient. I only take gifts from men who can afford to give me something truly valuable. Bananas are hardly enough. Hussein's face fell, but he tried to hide his disappointment. Zahra's expression softened for a split second, but she quickly regained her composure. With a flick of her wrist, she took the bananas and walked away, leaving Hussein standing there, speechless. She walked past another vendor, an older woman selling vegetables. This time, Zahra slowed her pace and allowed the woman to offer her some cucumbers. Zahra, how much for these? Vendor, 3,000 shillings, my daughter. But for you, 2,000. Zahra scoffed and shook her head. Zahra, 2,000? How rude. Don't you know who I am? She turned her back, leaving the vendor staring after her in disbelief. Zahra knew she was untouchable, a living legend in Tabora, and everyone, rich or poor, had to bow to her. That afternoon, Zahra's world was turned upside down when she met Juma. It was at a wedding, a grand event by Tabora's standards, complete with the rhythmic beats of tarab music, colorful decorations hanging from every corner, and enough food to feed the entire town. Zahra, of course, was the center of attention. She wore a striking green and gold dress, her dark hair styled perfectly, her makeup immaculate. As she floated across the dance floor, her eyes scanned the crowd. That's when she saw him. Juma stood at the edge of the gathering, watching her with a bemused expression. He was tall, with a broad build that hinted at strength. His face was calm, almost serious, with a set of deep brown eyes that seemed to see straight through her. Zahra, used to having men chase after her, couldn't help but be intrigued. She made her way toward him, her hips swaying in a way that she knew would catch his attention. Zahra, hello, stranger. I don't think we've met. Juma looked at her without a smile. Juma, no, we haven't. My name is Juma. Zahra tossed her hair back, feigning disinterest. Zahra, I'm Zahra, of course. Everyone knows me, but I'm surprised you haven't heard of me before. I make quite an impression. Juma raised an eyebrow, his lips curving slightly into a smile. Juma, I've heard of you, yes. But there's more to a person than the impression they make, don't you think? Zahra was taken aback. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Men usually fawned over her, told her how beautiful she was, and lavished her with compliments. Juma, however, seemed indifferent. It piqued her interest. Zahra, and what's that supposed to mean? Juma, it means that I'm not impressed by beauty alone. I look for something more, something deeper. Zahra felt a flicker of irritation, but it was quickly replaced by something else. Challenge. Zahra, teasing, oh? And what do you think you'll find if you decide to look? Juma met her gaze steadily, his eyes not giving away anything. Juma, I think I'll find someone who knows what it means to truly earn respect, not just demand it. Zahra blinked, her eyes narrowing slightly. This was different. This was interesting. Zahra, well, Juma, I'll just have to make sure you get to know me better. Let's see if you're right about me. And just like that, the playful challenge was set. Little did Zahra know, Juma was about to turn her world upside down, but not in the way she expected. The days following the wedding felt like a blur to Zahra. She could not stop thinking about Juma, his words echoing in her mind. I look for something deeper. She was used to men fawning over her, eager to shower her with compliments, gifts, and adoration. But Juma was different. He wasn't impressed by her beauty or her status. For the first time in her life, Zahra found herself questioning her own self-worth beyond her appearance. But she was not one to back down from a challenge. A week after the wedding, Zahra found herself walking to the town's bakery, her usual entourage of maids and friends trailing behind her. But today, for reasons she couldn't explain, she felt a peculiar pull to visit the bakery alone. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden hue across the town, and Zahra felt an odd sense of anticipation. As she walked through the narrow streets of Tabora, the hum of life around her seemed distant. When she reached the bakery, she saw Juma standing near the counter, chatting with the baker. His calm demeanor, his easy smile, and the way he carried himself made Zahra pause for a moment. He was different, and she couldn't quite understand why he had such an effect on her. With a deep breath, Zahra walked in. Zahra, well, look who's here. Juma turned to see her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, they just stood there, silently observing each other. Zahra broke the silence, her voice laced with playful arrogance. Zahra, so, you come to the bakery often? Or is this a special occasion? Juma's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. Juma, I come here when I want something real, something made with care. Zahra raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. Zahra, something real? Are you implying that there's no care in the food I eat? Juma chuckled softly, shaking his head. Juma, not at all. But I wonder if you've ever truly tasted something that wasn't just sweetened to please you. The challenge in his words was unmistakable. Zahra felt a small flicker of something inside her. Irritation, yes, but also curiosity. She wasn't used to being questioned like this. Zahra, well, Juma, it seems you've mistaken me for someone who's always satisfied with the ordinary. I always get what I want. If I wanted a challenge, I'd have to look elsewhere. Juma's eyes darkened for a split second, and Zahra knew she had struck a nerve. But instead of reacting, he simply shrugged. Juma, then I suppose you've never really had to work for anything you've gotten. Zahra's expression hardened, and for the first time, she felt a slight sting in her chest. No one had ever dared to accuse her of not working for anything. Her whole life had been about being adored, pampered, and waited on hand and foot. Zahra, I don't need to work for anything. My family has provided me with everything I could ever want. Juma looked at her with a quiet intensity. Juma, that's the problem, Zahra. You don't understand what it means to truly work for something, to put in effort and dedication. One day, you'll find that beauty alone can't keep you warm at night. Zahra felt a lump form in her throat. It was the first time anyone had ever said something like that to her. She was used to men fawning over her, but Juma was different. He wasn't intimidated by her beauty. In fact, it seemed like he was challenging her, daring her to prove herself. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she turned and walked out of the bakery, her mind racing. What did he mean by that? That beauty alone can't keep me warm? I have everything I need, everything I want. Who does he think he is, talking to me like that? But even as she fumed, a small, nagging thought kept poking at the back of her mind. Maybe Juma was right. Maybe there was more to life than just beauty and wealth. Maybe she needed to find out for herself. The following days were quiet, and Zahra tried to push the encounter with Juma from her mind. But it was impossible to forget. She began to notice things she hadn't before. How the maids worked tirelessly to clean the house, how her mother spent hours preparing meals for the family, how her father worked long hours in the fields and the market. One afternoon, Mama Zahra asked Zahra to help prepare lunch for the family. It was a simple meal, a pot of beef soup, served with ugali and a side of greens. Mama Zahra, Zahra, my dear, please help me chop the onions and garlic. Zahra hesitated, looking at the knife in her hand as though it were a foreign object. She had never cooked before. The maids had always done it, and Mama Zahra had always ensured that Zahra's life was one of luxury. Zahra, but Mama, I don't know how to cook. I've never had to. Why can't one of the maids do it? Mama Zahra smiled gently, her voice soft but firm. Mama Zahra, Zahra, one day, you'll need to know how. The time will come when you won't always have someone to do everything for you. Cooking for your family is something every woman should learn. It's a way to show love and care. Zahra frowned but nodded, grabbing the knife. She awkwardly began chopping the onions, tears stinging her eyes from the sharpness of the blades. She had never felt so out of place in her own home. The preparation took longer than she expected, and the beef soup didn't turn out quite as she had imagined. But she did it. For the first time in her life, Zahra felt a sense of accomplishment, not because of how she looked, but because she had done something for herself and for her family. It was a small task, but it was hers. That evening, as Zahra sat down to eat with her parents, she found herself deep in thought. She glanced at her mother, who was eating quietly, and then at her father, who smiled at her over the table. They had worked so hard to give her a life of comfort, a life she had taken for granted. But now, she was beginning to understand that there was more to life than beauty and indulgence. The next time she saw Juma, her demeanor was different. Instead of the usual haughty confidence, there was a quiet strength in her eyes. She walked up to him, her voice calmer than before. Zahra, Juma, I've been thinking about what you said. About working for something, about earning respect. Juma looked at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. Juma, and what have you decided? Zahra, I've decided that maybe you're right. Maybe I need to start earning things for myself. Juma smiled, his eyes softening. Juma, that's the first step, Zahra. The rest will come when you learn the value of hard work. Zahra felt a small sense of pride swelling in her chest. For the first time, she was no longer just the pretty, spoiled girl everyone knew. She was becoming someone who could stand on her own, someone who could prove her worth. The days following Zahra's moment of reflection were filled with unexpected tension. Though she had started to embrace the idea of hard work, she had no idea how quickly life was about to throw her into a test of her new resolve. The looming marriage rites with Juma, which she had been eagerly anticipating, were upon her, and everything was about to change. Zahra was sitting with her parents one evening, the sounds of crickets and the faint hum of a distant Tarab song filling the warm night air. The table was set with tea and fresh bread, and Mama Zahra poured her daughter a cup. Mama Zahra, Zahra, my dear, Juma's family will be coming over tomorrow to finalize the marriage rites. Are you ready? Zahra, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup, nodded absent-mindedly. Zahra, of course, Mama. I've prepared for this day all my life. But there was a hint of nervousness in her voice that didn't escape Mama Zahra's notice. It was the first time Zahra hadn't seemed completely confident about something. Mama Zahra, good. But there's one thing you should know. In Juma's family, there is a tradition, one that has been passed down for generations. It's part of the rites to seal the marriage. The bride must prepare a meal for the family. It's a sign of your love and commitment. Zahra froze, the cup of tea suddenly feeling heavy in her hands. Cook for his family? Me? The thought made her feel both uneasy and incredulous. Zahra, you mean I actually have to cook? I thought they would bring food, or that the maids would take care of it. Mama Zahra chuckled softly, but there was a certain seriousness in her eyes.
Mama Zahra? No, Zahra.
This is your responsibility. It is your chance to show Juma and his family that you are capable. It's not just about food. It's about showing that you are part of their world now. Zahra looked at her mother, unable to mask the panic in her eyes. She had never so much as lifted a spoon to stir a pot, let alone cook an entire meal. But this was expected of her. The pressure mounted. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. Zahra, what do I do, Mama? I don't know how to cook. Mama Zahra placed a hand on her daughter's arm, her touch warm and reassuring. Mama Zahra, don't worry, my dear. You will learn. Start simple and let your love for Juma guide you. Zahra sighed. She had no choice. It was time to grow up. The next morning, the house was buzzing with activity. The maids were busy cleaning, preparing the house for the arrival of Juma's family. The table was set, and Mama Zahra instructed the maids to leave the kitchen for Zahra's hands-on experience. Zahra stood before the kitchen counter, staring down at the ingredients in front of her. A large pot of beef, vegetables, spices. Everything appeared to be in its rightful place. But it all felt foreign to her. She had never been involved in meal preparation, let alone been in charge of cooking for an entire family. The task seemed insurmountable, but she knew she had to prove herself. She picked up a knife with a sense of determination and began chopping the onions, but her hands trembled. The first onion was sliced unevenly, and she cursed under her breath. Zahra, why is this so hard? Why is everything so wrong? Her frustration grew. She hadn't even started the soup, and already she felt overwhelmed. Mama Zahra, sensing her daughter's distress, entered the kitchen with a smile.
Mama Zahra, breathe, Zahra.
Cooking is an art, not a race. Start slow, and everything will fall into place. But Zahra didn't listen. She was too focused on the one thing that made her nervous. How could she prepare a meal worthy of Juma's family when she didn't even know what she was doing? A few minutes later, Zahra poured the beef into the pot with the onions, garlic, and spices. Everything smelled vaguely familiar, but she felt a gnawing sense of dread in her gut. As the stew simmered, she began to feel the weight of the situation. What if I mess this up? Her mind raced. Zahra, I can't fail. I can't disappoint them. But just as she thought things might be under control, her mind wandered back to her conversation with Juma. His words echoed in her mind. I wonder if you've ever truly tasted something that wasn't just sweetened to please you. She glanced around the kitchen. Her eyes fell on a bottle of Pepsi, her favorite drink, a soft drink in every household. Maybe just a little bit of Pepsi will make it taste sweeter. The thought was quick, almost automatic. She grabbed the bottle of Pepsi and poured a generous amount of the drink into the soup, stirring it in as though it were the most natural thing to do. She tasted it, the sweetness of the Pepsi blending with the savory broth. Zahra smiled. It wasn't perfect, but it was passable. At least she thought so. The sugar had masked any odd taste, and she felt a sudden surge of relief. She looked down at the pot of soup, her heart swelling with pride. She had done it. The time came, and Juma's family arrived at the house, looking every bit the picture of grace and dignity. Juma, as usual, was reserved but polite. He greeted Zahra's parents, and then his eyes found Zahra. There was a brief, unspoken connection between them, a moment that seemed to carry the weight of their shared history and the uncertainty of their future. The meal was served, and everyone sat down at the table. Zahra, in an attempt to impress, took her place at the head of the table, watching intently as the first spoonful was lifted to Juma's father's lips. Juma's father, a tall, dignified man named Baba Ali, took a slow bite, chewing thoughtfully. He put down his spoon, his brow furrowing slightly. He took another bite, then another. But with each passing second, his expression grew more and more puzzled. Baba Ali. This is different. Zahra smiled nervously, eager to hear his thoughts. But the smile soon faltered when Juma's younger brother, Farouk, suddenly stood up, his face turning pale. Farouk, I think I need to go to the toilet. His words were followed by the unmistakable sound of chairs scraping as others quickly stood up. Juma's father excused himself, his face a mixture of surprise and discomfort, but it didn't take long before the entire family was rushing out of the room, one by one. Zahra stood frozen, her heart sinking. The room felt unbearably quiet. What had gone wrong? Her mother rushed into the room, her face a mix of concern and embarrassment. Mama Zahra. Zahra, what did you put in the soup? Zahra, confused and disoriented, stared down at the bowl in front of her. The moment she realized her mistake, it was like a cold wave crashing over her. She had ruined everything. The laughter from the bathroom was faint, but enough to make Zahra's face burn with humiliation.
Zahra. Oh no.
What have I done? Zahra sat at the dinner table, her body stiff with embarrassment, her eyes downcast. The sounds of Juma's family, scattered throughout the house, barely reached her ears. Her mind was still trapped in the moment when she had watched the first signs of disaster unfold, the moment when her once perfect world had cracked. She felt humiliated. It wasn't just about the soup. It was the realization that for the first time in her life, she had failed. She had tried so hard to impress Juma's family, but all her efforts had backfired. The sweet taste of sugar in the soup was still on her tongue, mocking her with its failure. How could I have been so foolish? The next few days were tense. Juma's family had, as politely as possible, tried to pretend the incident hadn't happened. But Zahra could feel the subtle shift in their demeanor. Juma's father, Baba Ali, had made a passing comment. It was an interesting meal, my daughter-in-law. A unique flavor. That had been his way of telling Zahra that her attempt at cooking had been a disaster. She couldn't bring herself to face Juma properly. She had become a joke, a spoiled, pampered girl who couldn't even cook a simple meal. And Juma hadn't said a word to her after that day. He had left with his family, without so much as a glance in her direction. Zahra sat on the porch of her family home, staring out at the vast, sweeping fields of Tabora, her mind racing. How had it come to this? Her pride had been her shield, and now it was shattered. Later that afternoon, Mama Zahra sat next to her, her presence gentle but firm. She had seen the way Zahra had withdrawn into herself, the weight of her failure hanging over her like a dark cloud. Mama Zahra, my dear, I know you are upset, but there is something I need you to understand. Zahra turned to look at her mother, her face a mask of frustration. Zahra, Mama, I don't understand. I tried so hard. I thought I could prove to them that I was capable, but I messed everything up. They will never take me seriously again. Mama Zahra placed a comforting hand on Zahra's shoulder, her voice soft but insistent. Mama Zahra, sweetheart, cooking is not about perfection. It's about showing love, care, and effort. You made a mistake, yes. But mistakes are how we grow. Juma is not looking for a perfect woman, Zahra. He's looking for someone who can learn, who can adapt, who can try. Zahra listened, her heart heavy. She had always thought that beauty and charm would be enough, but her mother's words were slowly sinking in. Zahra, but Mama, I'm so used to people giving me what I want without effort. I don't know how to work for things. Mama Zahra smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. Mama Zahra, that's the lesson you need to learn, Zahra. Life is not about what is given to you. It's about what you are willing to work for. And sometimes, that means admitting when you are wrong and doing what it takes to make it right. Zahra nodded slowly, feeling a spark of realization. Her mother was right. She had spent her entire life being handed everything she wanted, and it had made her lazy, complacent. But now, for the first time, she was learning that real success required hard work, humility, and resilience. The next few days were filled with a quiet determination. Zahra began to spend more time in the kitchen, practicing her cooking. She didn't have the luxury of calling in a maid to do everything for her anymore. The process was slow, and at times, it felt like a punishment. Chopping vegetables, stirring pots, measuring spices. Each task felt like an insurmountable mountain to climb. But with each passing day, Zahra grew more confident. She learned how to make simple dishes, ugali, beef stew, vegetables, and as she prepared each meal, She thought about her family, about Juma, and about what it meant to truly care. It wasn't just about the food, it was about the effort she put into it. One afternoon, as Zahra was chopping onions in the kitchen, she felt a presence behind her.
It was Juma.
Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to come by. Zahra, Juma? Juma nodded, his face unreadable. Juma, I wanted to talk to you. Zahra swallowed hard, unsure of what to expect. He had barely spoken to her since the disastrous meal, and now he was here. She wiped her hands on a cloth and turned to face him. Zahra, about the soup? Juma's lips curled into a slight smile, but there was a softness in his eyes that made Zahra's heart race. Juma, no, not just the soup. About everything. You've changed, Zahra. Zahra blinked in surprise. Zahra, changed? Juma stepped closer, his voice calm and steady. Juma, yes. I can see it in your eyes. The way you're trying. The way you're not just expecting things to be handed to you anymore. I admire that. Zahra felt her cheeks flush, a warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of pride. It wasn't about the food, it was about what she was learning about herself.
Zahra, thank you, Juma.
I'm trying. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to be better. Juma smiled at her, his gaze softening. Juma, I can see that. And that's all I wanted to see. You don't have to be perfect, Zahra. You just have to be real. Zahra felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She wasn't perfect, and that was okay. She was learning, growing, and becoming someone who could be proud of herself. The next week, Zahra prepared another meal for Juma's family. This time, she was calm, focused, and determined. She had learned from her past mistakes, and she was no longer afraid to admit that she needed to try again. When Juma and his family arrived, they were greeted by the delicious smell of freshly cooked food. The meal was simple, but there was something about it that felt different. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As they sat down to eat, Zahra watched them carefully. Juma's father took a bite, then another. His eyes flickered with approval, and Zahra felt a swell of relief. Baba Ali, this is much better, Zahra. You've done well. Zahra smiled, a genuine smile that came from deep within her. She had done it. She had faced her fear, learned from her mistakes, and created something meaningful. Later that evening, as Juma and Zahra stood alone in the yard, he turned to her with a thoughtful expression. Juma, you've come a long way, Zahra. I'm proud of you. Zahra felt her heart race, the words she had longed to hear, now echoing in her ears. She had earned his respect, not through her beauty or her wealth, but through her hard work and dedication.
Zahra, thank you, Juma.
I'm just getting started. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills of Tabora, Zahra and Juma sat on the porch of her family's house. The air was cool, carrying with it the scent of fresh earth and the faint rustle of palm leaves. Juma was happy Zahra had made progress. The lessons from the kitchen had not only reshaped her approach to cooking but also to life itself. The quiet mornings, spent alone in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and stirring pots, were now moments of introspection, her own little rituals of growth. She had discovered that cooking wasn't just about feeding people, it was a way of expressing love, patience, and effort. More than that, it was a way of showing herself that she was capable.